the hidden emotional labour of school staff and why it might be breaking you. So hello and welcome back to the Resilient Kid podcast. Really sorry that we skipped last week. As you can hear, my throat is not 100%, but here we are nevertheless. So today's episode is for those adults who really work with children and go home absolutely spent. Not because the day was particularly dramatic, but because it was relentless. So if you have ever got in your car after work and thought, oh, why am I so exhausted? Why can't I switch my brain off? Then this is the episode for you. Because what's draining you isn't workload. It isn't just paperwork. It's because, and also, can I just say, it's not because you're not resilient enough. It's something less visible, far more exhausting. It's emotional labour. So I'm Asha Costello, psychotherapist here at The Resilient Kid, and we go into schools all the time doing CPD and training. So we see you, we see the hard work that you do. And what is emotional labour in schools? Well, when we talk about this, we're talking about that invisible work of managing kids' emotions, not just yours, but also everybody else's around you. In school, that might look like staying calm when a child is dysregulated. It might be softening your tone when you're really stressed. It might be absorbing children's fear, anger, sadness, even rejection sometimes. And that can be by their friends, by another adult. It is being that safe adult when children feel unsafe. And it's regulating multiple nervous systems before you even get to your own. And here's the thing. Most school staff don't do this once or twice a day. They do it constantly. Every lesson, transition, behaviour incident, every child who walks in carrying something heavy from home and is rarely acknowledged because it's seen as part of the job. But your nervous system doesn't see it that way. And we acknowledge that. Just, if nothing else today, know that we see you. We hear you. But why does it leave us so depleted? So if you was working in an office, you wouldn't come home emotionally exhausted. You might be shattered. Your brain might be buzzing after the day, but you wouldn't necessarily be emotionally exhausted. So let's just me explain what's happening in your body right now. When you support a dysregulated child, your nervous system goes into co-regulation mode. So it's slowing your breathing, softening your voice, staying steady even when things feel chaotic or manic. And that is skilled work. And yes, you don't get paid enough for it, but it is skilled. And when you do that all day long and you don't have a chance to reset, your body doesn't get a break. So by the time you get home, you might feel flat or numb, snappy with the people around you, unable to talk. You might just go into that flight response or desperate to just scroll, eat, sleep, anything to just shut down. That, my friend, is an emotional exhaustion. And it's why so many of our brilliant, compassionate school professionals say, I love the children, but I just don't know how much longer I can do this. And I'm going to be really honest with you. And I'll share something here. There was a point in my own work when I realised I wasn't tired in the usual way. I wasn't just busy tired. I was emotionally exhausted. And there gets a point where I'm having to hold space for some beautiful children and teens. And I have to regulate whole rooms at a time, especially if I'm delivering. And I could say exactly the right thing in the moment. But at the end of the day, I didn't have enough left for me or my kids, my family. And what's hardest isn't the workload, it's carrying everybody else's feelings while having no space to process my own. And I remember thinking, if this is what being good at work looks like, why does it hurt? Because it did. And that moment was kind of when I understood burnout. because burnout isn't always about doing too much. Sometimes it's about caring really deeply in systems that don't protect us, that don't protect the adults, the carers. And as much as I bang on about the system being broke, this is one of the big things for me about really helping the staff. So what makes compassionate staff more at risk? Because we've seen colleagues, haven't we? Like, I know some people who work in schools and they don't care. They're not emotionally available for the kids around them or their colleagues. They go in, they do a job 9 to 5. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I was at a delivering CPD last week in a beautiful, beautiful school. And I started off with, this is not for you. If this job is too hard, if you don't care about the kids, you need to leave. You just need to leave. And I wasn't on about my training. I was on about the profession, because it's hard enough when you care, but you just make the job 10 times worse if you don't. So here's something important. The people most at risk of burnout are they're the best ones. They're the ones who notice the quiet children. They're the ones who stay calm when others escalate. They understand behaviour as a mode of communication for these kids and teens. And they carry families emotionally, not just academically. And for me, there's a sense of, if you admit to burning out, that's you're weak, and actually you're not. You're burning out because you're emotionally available all day. You're highly attuned to those around you, not just the kids and the teens, but your colleagues, your friends. You're doing work that requires you to be present. And you're doing it inside a system that rarely slows down and that is broken. And that mismatch, that's exhausting. And so I want to say this gently to you, right? There has got to be an identity shift. If you're listening to this and nodding along thinking, yes, that's it, Ashley, that tells me something about you. It tells me you understand kids at that nervous system level. It tells me you know how to co-regulate. You create emotional safety for those kids around you without even trying. And those aren't soft skills. They are high-level specialist skills. And the world needs more of you. It needs more of those specialist skill sets. But they don't have to come at a cost of your well-being. You don't need to stop supporting the kids and teens in your care. You don't need to toughen up, and you certainly don't need to disappear into burnout just to prove how dedicated you are. We can do this differently. So how do we do it? How do we stay present, stay caring, but still look after ourselves? One of the biggest questions I hear from school staff is, how do I keep showing up for children without losing me? Because the truth is, telling caring professionals to set boundaries or do more self-care often feels insulting when you've already stretched to the edge. So instead of adding more to your plate, let's have a look at micro protection, really small, realistic ways to protect your nervous system while you're doing this deep work that's so important. So I think the first thing for me would be separate empathy from absorbing. So you can care without carrying it all day. Let me give you an example. Empathy says, I see that this is hard for you. Absorbing is like, I'm going to take this home with me. That internal script that we have, is this mine or is it theirs? Because I think when you do feel stuff really deeply, it feels almost to be cold or uncaring. And actually, this is a professional compassion. So over time, thinking about that mental shift can make a real difference to that emotional exhaustion. Is this mine or is this theirs? Because we can still be empathetic We can still care without taking it on board and putting it on our plate. Also, the other thing for me around is close that emotional loop before you move on. So most adults that support a dysregulated child, and then they move on to the next one or the next one or the next demand. And actually, leaders of schools, SLTs, need to understand that we need to take a minute as well, not just the kids, but that nervous system. It doesn't get the message if we don't stop, right? So just take a few moments, whether it's 5, 10 minutes, to just reset. Just give yourself a minute to take a big, deep breath. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Drop your shoulders. Mentally log, that's done, right? And if you can, get outside for that fresh air, that big breath. It's tiny, but it helps your body release that moment instead of storing it and then compounding the next one on top. That's the minimum you should be doing. But if you can, take 5 minutes, have a brew, have something to eat, just ground yourself a little bit before you step into the next thing. Predictability. Use predictability to reduce your load. All right. Doesn't just help children, it protects you. So things like first this, then that. What's happening next? I'll come back in 2 minutes. It's less emotional firefighting you have to do later. The more predictable you can be, the more preventative it is, particularly when we're talking about self-care. This is more than classroom management. I think the next thing I'd want to say to you is build in one low demand moment to your day. Not a break, a walk. We're not talking about a bubble bath or a spa day, but one moment where you're not regulating somebody else. So whether it is that you just sit in silence with that brew, whether it is you stand outside for 60 seconds, 2 minutes, look at something neutral like sky, tree, outside a window. No talking, no problem solving, no offloading, just your nervous system having proof of safety, of your safety. And then kind of the next one, I would say, is almost as important. It's not the most important. I'm going to give you that in a minute. But also naming the load, even if you can't change it. But unspoken emotional labour drains more than acknowledged emotional labour. So quietly naming it helps. Oh, that was a lot. Today just asked too much of me. Or it's no wonder I'm tired. This isn't negativity, it's self-validation that you've had a hard day. And we know that self-validation reduces burnout more than that forced toxic positivity ever will. So whether it's you and a colleague in the classroom, at the end of the day, my God, that was a hard day today. You don't have to go into the ins and outs, but acknowledging it, validating that it's okay to feel like that as well. And then this, for me, is one of the most important things, is create a transition ritual before you go home. And it can look various different ways. So I always used to work out of area. So I used to work minimum of 20 minutes, but 25 minutes away from home on purpose. So that when I got in the car, I kind of regulated myself. I went through the day in my head. I then listened to something to just switch that brain from that work mode to getting myself ready to come home and be with my own family and be regulated for my own kids. I don't have that so much anymore, but what I will do is I will do little transitions, and I'm going to share that with you. So simple rituals can really help with this. And it's giving your brain that sign and signal that we're switching roles now. So one is change shoes, right? So have shoes that you wear for work and don't wear them anywhere else, if possible. Wash your hands. And this does 2 things. So I always putting water just on your wrists really helps reset your nervous system. Wash your hands, run your wrists under cool water before you leave. really helps just reset. Take some deep breaths before you start the car. Now, my hubby would be really glad that if he ever listens to the podcast, he'll be glad I've said this, but I have a diesel car. So we turn the engine and then we don't turn it over. So in that moment that I just turn the key, I take 3 deep breaths, just lessen the strain in my shoulders. And then I turn on the car, and whether that's the radio comes on, a podcast or an audio book. But what it does is it says work stays here, right? You're putting your body into that. Now, depending on where I am, so on a Wednesday, before I leave the school, because I work in the same school all day, I will flash the key fob to get out. I sign out. And then just before I step over the threshold of the door, I take a breath and I say, thank you for today. I'm leaving it here. In my head, not out loud. I don't want to be everyone think I'm crazy. But actually, just stopping. And as I put my hand on that door handle, just taking that breath and saying, it stays here. Thank you for today. And I go out. And I kind of then, now it's not always possible to do that. But if you work in the same place, whether you are touching that door handle on the way out of the classroom or touching the door handle on the way, crossing that threshold at the beginning of the school, as you're signing out, thank you for today, I'm on my way home. And it's resetting that nervous system. It's really important that we have those little rituals because you're telling your nervous system, I'm okay, I'm safe, and I'm switching roles right now. I'm getting ready for home. And then kind of what I want you, I guess, as the last thing to be thinking about is presence doesn't mean perfection. We don't have to fix everything. We don't have to absorb all these big feelings. We don't have to do it on our own. And we don't have to be relentlessly calm. Sometimes presence is about saying, I'm here, I care, but actually I've done enough today. And whether that means we tap in with another colleague, whether that means we say, I need 5 minutes out, because we don't have to be perfect. And kids need to see us trying to regulate ourselves as well. They don't need this limitless adult. They need a regulated human being next to them. And what a good role model if you're saying, I need 5 minutes right now. And we know that in the moment, sometimes that's not always possible. But afterwards, it should be. Absolutely. You need to look after yourself. And part of self-care is saying, I need this. I need to be able to do this. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I do all of this instinctively, I just don't get looked after in return, that tells me something important. You already have skills that many children desperately need. And the next step isn't giving more, it's learning how to use those skills without burning out yourself. And that is possible. So what I urge you to do is make sure you put those boundaries in place. Make sure you look after yourself. And so when you look after yourself, you can look after the others. But I just want to say, I highly respect the work that you do in schools. I see and hear the work you do every day. And it's hard work. It's emotionally exhausting work. And thank you. Thank you for doing it. Before we finish, I'd just like to say, well done. And if you think this podcast is going to help one of your friends, maybe your friend is a TA or a teacher in a school, share it with them. And if they want to come on the podcast and tell us what it's like, what it's really like to be in school, please let me know. Drop us a message, either a DM or email me at ashley@theresilientkid.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, everyone. Sending you lots of love from my family to yours. Bye for now.